that lesson was kind of like film school for me, making for the boys and then taking it to Showtime and getting the opportunity to shadow directors on various sets and things like that. Because of that show, made me prepared for doing what I'm doing now.
What's up? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Film Festival Friends. I'm your host, Brandon Nick. And if you're a filmmaker interested in festivals and indie production, well, this is the show for you. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of these insightful conversations. Today, I am chatting with my good friend Mekhai Lee to talk about his short film, Them That's Not, and his journey from self-produced passion projects to studio-supported cinema. And the conversation starts right now. Hello, friend. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm
I
doing
also love
pretty
that tree in the
well. I'm doing
background.
pretty well. Thank you, thank you. A nice little addition to the room, and with our Black Lives Matter in the back too, as a reminder and a mantra. But I'm doing pretty well. I'm bringing in, uh, like as we said before, an air of acceptance. So I'm feeling very, very calm, cool, and collected today.
I
So,
love that. I love game shows. One of my favorite game
hmm
shows is Meredith Vieira's 25 Words or Less. So
okay,
I'm going to ask you to tell me about Them That's Not in 25 words or less. Okay.
okay. And here I go. Them That's Not is about a deaf woman who comes home to her hearing family and reconnects with her dad. Period.
Sometimes yes,
Yeah.
and you did that in under 20. Sometimes I make the mistake of counting syllables,
Okay.
but no, that was great.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Thank you for that. Can you tell me what is the origin story of your short film? What is the origin story of Them That's Not?
It's interesting because it actually the origin story starts in a sort of more than or less than happier place. I'd lost a family member of mine, and when she passed, I had had this grant offered to me, or like an opportunity to apply for this grant offered to me, and I was not going to do it. I was like thinking to myself, I'm dealing with grief right now, and I'm just not in a place emotionally to sort of work on a project or even apply for something new. And the person who passed was my grandmother, actually. And when she was laying in the hospital bed next to me, I kind of like was approached spiritually or like in a dream, I guess. Like it just felt like in a time or a plane beyond ours where I was sort of given a message of like, she would want you to do this. And it sort of
Mm,
directly came from her, or at least her body, her something. Like I was in between sleep and it kind of sounds woo woo, but that's exactly what happened. And it was one of those moments where she was very clear about passing this message on, like, use
mm,
what is happening to you, utilize this, transmutate this into something that could be helpful for you or like cathartic in a way. And
yeah.
so I started to work on the story from that place, taking everything sort of my family was going through at that moment and apply it to what the challenge of the grant was, which was to take a song and essentially build a film around that song, which the song I chose was God Bless the Child by Billie Holiday. And that's where the idea sort of stemmed from. And I built it based on the history of the song and other
Mm,
ideas that I was sort of thinking about. And the deaf aspect sort of came in because I like the idea of being, a queer family, a queer person in a heteronormative family, or being a grieving person in a family that's not grieving as much as you are, grieving the
mm,
person that passed, and then also being a deaf person surrounded by hearing people, and just that
yeah.
sort of disconnect. I thought there was a cool way to like make all of that work in one, and it ended up really paying off in a very lucrative way, where it was something that felt very natural. It just flowed out of
Yeah.
me, and it wasn't like work to create. Of course, it was work to create, but it didn't feel that way. It felt cathartic. It felt healing. So,
That's beautiful. And
yeah.
you spoke about the grant because my next question was going to be how did you fund the film, which I imagine was the same thing. So can you talk to me a bit
Yeah.
about the grant that you were a part of and what that experience has been like for you?
Yeah, it was a great experience overall. I would recommend it to any other filmmaker. It was the Concord and NewFest Film Festival's Sound and Scene grant, which is essentially a grant where they provide they choose 5 songs and they ask applicants to apply with ideas for each of the songs. You can choose whatever song, you only apply with one song. And then they sort of divvy it out by the song choices and
Mm.
essentially interview you once you make it past a few rounds to see to have you pitch what your idea is essentially. um, and I was happy and grateful that they chose my idea, along with 4 other filmmakers who all made really wonderful stuff. We embarked from there on a 10-month journey of, they gave a $20,000 grant and they were with you every step of the way, the writing, the pre-production, the budgeting, the production, and they were really supportive. We were sending each other videos from set and everything. You get into a cohort with your filmmakers, you become friends with these filmmakers, you're all creating something at the same time. And then you premiere it at the end of the year, which ended up being for us June 1st at NewFest Pride. Now I think they've moved it from NewFest Pride to the actual NewFest Film Festival.
Hmm.
It was really fun. Like we just had a really great experience. I met some really cool people, people I still speak to. NewFest has become family because of this grant. Concord has become family because of this grant. So it's something I would highly recommend to anybody. And I mean, I had the best time doing it. And I love the project that came out of it. So
You did a beautiful job with this, especially considering
thank
this
you.
was your first film, unlike your first short film, and this is not your
Yeah,
first project. And I'll touch on that, but I think I'm
right.
just naming that, like, as a first time filmmaker, not even so much a first time artist,
Hmm.
but like making your first short film, and for it to have such a like beautiful, even maybe even sad, but like such a beautiful origin story, um,
Hmm.
and to see the outcome of the film is beautiful. So I just want, if
Yeah,
nothing else, I said all that to give you your flowers. Can you
I
talk to
received that. Thank
me?
you.
You're welcome. Can you talk to me about how you staffed and casted the film?
Yeah, it was a bit of a journey. So it's funny because speaking of NewFest, we're all friends with each other, especially the Black filmmakers, and I'm a good friend of Mars Rucker, who was working on a production at Deaf West in LA and
Mm,
was learning sign language. And I knew I wanted to work on a project featuring sign language. And so I reached out to them and I said, "Hey, Mars, like, do you know anybody who fits the type of this? Like, do you know anyone who would, play this lead role I'm working on fairly well?" I was only about halfway through the script at the time, but I kind of explained to them what the type was. And they named, I think, about 3 or 4 actors for me.
mm,
And one of the actors was in the production with Mars. And when I saw
mm,
Angel's pictures, that's their name. I just knew that Angel seemed exactly right. And so we all hopped on a Zoom, me, Mars, and Angel. And, Angel is actually hard of hearing, not completely deaf. So they had the ability to be on the Zoom with me. And I think they had the Zoom call captioned as well.
mm,
And I was just speaking about the role. And I think Angel wanted to see how I viewed deafness in particular because she didn't want to be a part of anything where it was considered to be. A disability of some sort, like it really had to
mm.
be a method of storytelling rather than something that the character was suffering from.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how Angel and Mars got wrapped in because Mars is also acting in the film, but also Mars was my DEI, my head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Mars practically provided every aspect of deaf representation on the set.
Mm,
They connected me to my director of artistic sign language. They connected me to various interpreters and translators, so that we could have an all inclusive set and have intersection between hearing and non-hearing people, and thusly queer and non-queer people. I mean, our crew was pretty diverse, and I had folks from LA and folks from Mexico, and a really great assortment of people coming together to make something that, everyone was cared about, and it had its stressful moments. It was 3 days, and at the beginning, your first day is always kind of really stressful. You're always dealing with snafus, as you said. But by the third day, our final day, we were doing the final scene of the film, and there was just this emotive quality pretty much universally on the set, and people were getting emotional. And I found that a lot of my crew was coming up to me and saying, like, I have issues with my own dad, and this is really healing
mm,
for me. And mind you, they're watching us shoot this, and the scene is completely signed. There's no speaking in it.
Mm.
And you don't have captions or subtitles in real life, so it was cool to watch them react to a scene that they had no idea what the language was that was being said or
Yeah.
spoken. Um, but they were still having this really visceral reaction to it. So that was the most beautiful part for me because I knew that in that moment that the film probably was going to work because people were having real moments on set without knowing what was
Yeah.
being said. So
And
yeah,
I think that really does speak to like what you were saying about like intentional art making and not just making art for the sake of
yeah,
making art. Um, knowing that you already have skin in the game
hmm
from making For the Boys, the digital series, the phenomenal For the Boys, the digital series. What was that transition like going from a digital series into a short film as like from the way that I see it, and you can correct me in your answer if I'm wrong, but coming
hmm
from like independent filmmaking with a digital series for the boys
hmm
to having money and proper resources and
right, right.
support for making a short film. So, like, what was that transition like? And who did you need to become in order to
Mm.
in order to make that transition and to make that film?
There's a couple layers to that question. I think in making For the boys felt pedestrian, and people hate when I call it that, but it's what it felt like. It felt like we were making it with friends, we were making it because we wanted to, because we were bored, because we wanted to see ourselves on television. There was a multitude of reasons, but we weren't creating from a place of like, we're filmmakers, we were
Mm,
just interested in creating, which
yeah.
I think the background in storytelling is what really served that. And there was a more of a team making thing or team building thing when it came to For the Boys. Like that show is truly about community and the community that you cultivate around you in that time of your life, So everything we were going through on and offset, we were putting into the show, jokes that
Mm-hmm.
we were like inside jokes that we had with each other ended up becoming For the Boys jokes that people quote to us now. It was one of those like spur of the moment, off the cuff, shooting from the hip kind of things. Like we were just like making it for whatever. And for that matter, we made For the Boys. I had 20,000 to do Them That's Not. For the Boys is made pretty universally for like 16,000, but we made 10 episodes with that. So it was
Yeah. Wow.
very limited resources. Like we were on a shoestring budget, practically nothing. Like rubber bands and chewed up
You said
gum.
16,000.
Yeah. 16,000,
So yeah,
was
that's like
4,000
1600.
less.
Yeah, like 1600 an episode. I just did some
Pretty
quick random
much.
math.
Pretty much. Exactly. No, that's pretty much exactly what it was. And I mean, a lot of shooting in folks' apartments and Prospect Park. We would just like shoot off the street. I remember one time we needed Saeed to work at a restaurant, but we couldn't afford to go in a restaurant. So we just found a like brunch spot that was closed that morning and like shot it 20 feet away. So it looked like they worked at the restaurant, but it didn't. We was just like down the block.
Right.
Um, that's the level of resource we had. Whereas with Them That's Not, I did have backing, I did have production support, but I also was shooting one film, one
Mm,
location. So I could really invest in the image of the film, the quality of it. So it felt like the most professional set that I ever was in charge of. And I
mm,
was lucky to have fallen in love with filmmaking with For the Boys and done some studying over the years that, I was preparing to make this and then I'm making this and it's the person I had to become was like a leader, but a listener. And I think I learned a lot of that listening quality from being on set with For the Boys because it was such a communal,
mm,
collaborative experience that I think when people think of a director, they think of someone who comes in and barks orders around. But a lot of what it is fielding questions. And
mm,
sometimes you don't have the answers to those questions. So you really do have to be a listener to someone with more expertise with lighting or gripping or time management, budget management. And I certainly made mistakes. It's not to say that I did anything completely right, but I know that in order to make the best film, I had to be an active listener, with a vision. That doesn't mean be sort of like loosey goosey about what you want. You have to know what you want, but you have to have a vision and be open to that shifting a bit.
mm.
That's never gonna remain exactly how you saw it. Which actually makes me think of one time my brilliant director of photography, Sade and Dia. I was talking to her on the third day, and we were looking at some of the dailies, and I was like, you know, Sade, and mind you, this I shouldn't have said it this way because, but this is a mistake I made. I said, you know, Sade, I wrote this film and I pictured it in a way, and how you shot it, it looks nothing like how I pictured it. And she was like, what? Like, what? What do you mean? Like,
Because that's not
and
what
I
you
was like,
meant,
no,
though.
but I'm saying. And I heard it after I said it. And everybody on the crew started laughing. They was like, "Wait, is that do you like the film?" And I was like, "No, what I'm saying is that I love it. I love it. It's better than what I pictured, but only because like you brought something to it that I would have never thought of. You know, you've elevated this project in a way that
Mm,
I always dreamed of it being, and you made that a reality as I'm watching it. And we're not even hearing it at this point. We're just seeing the pictures. You know, that's what collaboration does. It brings a new energy, it infuses your work with more possibility. So
yes. No, yeah, because I was
yeah,
really about to say the
yeah.
exact same thing. You took the word out of my mouth.
I think with the digital series, you know, For the Boys is a beautiful thing, and it has a massive fan base. People love it, you know, but there's an extent to who that show is for and it affects, right? And with them, that's not. I found that it's opened up a breadth of opportunity that I was never even fully aware of or fully knowledgeable about how to have access to, you know.
Yeah.
But now it's a world where people are like seeing my work and taking it seriously and taking me as an artist seriously, which is a dream and also an affirmative thing. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe there is a possibility here that I had not been considering before because I was someone who just wanted to make theater, you know? And
Yeah.
now I'm like, there are opportunities for me to make theater and still be a director in that way, but people are only taking me seriously in that regard because of this latest film, you know. And
Yeah.
it's a different muscle because For the Boys is a popular piece of work. Then that's not is not popular. It's reputable. It's
Yeah.
respected, you know.
Like making Miss Honey and specifically putting it in the festival circuit, where like now Miss Honey, the cat suit has been like my calling card, and I guess in a similar way that like them, that's not as like become your
Mm.
calling card, even though we both have prior existing work,
Projects. Yeah,
right,
before
like
this, yeah.
projects. But I think being in the festival circuit
Hmm.
probably has like put you and the film and
For
you as a
sure, for
filmmaker in a more
sure.
pointed direction.
I agree with you on how the festival circuit will position you because again, a lot of these institutions are run by non-black folks. So because they're having these emotional, dramatic responses, they take me serious as a director. And I actually
Yeah,
agree with you. I prefer the term intentional because it's intention what I'm bringing to the fest or what I'm trying to evoke with my art. But what the fest responds to is like, oh, here's a very serious filmmaker, you know? And I was just at a fest recently, and it was interesting for people to meet me and be like, oh, he's fun. Like we're laughing, we're having a good time, you know? It's just a conundrum because they're expecting me to be like this like poignant like serious thinker and I'm fully
auteur.
capable of
Yeah,
that. Yeah, and very much an auteur, but and I'm capable of that because that's where I come from, that's the art I create and that's what I was trained to do. But I also like drinking as much as the next person. I like to go out, like I like to be in the community space and some of the films that were there were comedies which no one was really expecting, so I really liked meeting funny directors and funny writers and people who like to keep life light and unserious, so
what was it like for you to and I know you spoke about this earlier, but like what was it like to be in the room like premiering your work in a room and like at
mm,
SVA in an audience full of folks for New Fest Pride, especially as folks who have made art in the past. I think it is so
mhm.
different than like premiering your stuff on like YouTube or Vimeo and then receiving
It's
the
a different
influx of love
feeling. It's
versus like
completely
being
different.
yeah, so like what was that first screening like
Yeah.
for you?
A dream come true. It was nerve-wracking, and I was glad that everyone was there, that everyone who was there,
Mm,
because it was the most perfect community that I could have had around me. But I was terrified. I was afraid that something wouldn't work, or, everyone was asking me after the screening, what did I expect from it? And I expected people to be like, "Oh, that was good. We're waiting to see your next one." And people were just really supportive about the film, like just really like in love with it. And I think it was affirming in that way because I was I was just scared. I'd never seen my own work on a big screen like that, you
Mm.
know. Um, for the boys again, premiered on YouTube, so we were always watching that at home or on little screens. And it's a YouTube show, you know, it's a digital series. But to be going to the fest now, and well, especially that premiere was like sort of an eye opener. Like, oh, this is what it feels like to make a movie, you know, and
Mm.
have people sit in community and watch it with you instead of message you about it digitally. This show affected me, this show did this for me. It's like you're getting it in real time with people responding to what you've created. I've had the experience of people come up to me and tell me about their dads or their family or being hard of hearing, and just really feel like they can trust me as a
Mm.
sounding board for their emotion, you know, because of the film. That has been the best part with the fest, which is something which is wild because I finished that in May of this year. It's an old project to me, but it's new, and every time someone sees it, it becomes new again. You know, it's
Oh wow, no, that
like
is
I
a
just did
good,
it, you know?
yeah. Um,
Hmm.
can what's been your favorite festival moment so far?
Mm, it's gonna have to be Chicago International, but and it's not what people think it is. It's not the award, but it really was doing that screening in Chicago because our screening was after the award ceremony. So when we went to the screening, and it was a sold out audience, like sold out venue, but it was sold out because people had heard that there was an award winner in this block. So then all the tickets got sold. But once we got to that screening, really the best part about it was meeting the other filmmakers. Meeting like because it was a Black Perspectives block, so every other filmmaker was a Black filmmaker.
Mm. Knowing a lot of filmmakers and like storytellers, like seldom am I able to actually like experience the work with them in real time. It's like, oh, you know, you've made a thing like you made For the
Hmm.
Boys. I watched For the Boys online when it came out, but like versus
Yeah.
we are in the same festival together. We are like I'm looking forward
Yes.
to being in
Premiering
the
here.
theater with you and you being in the theater with me and us being able
Yes.
to watch it together. I think that is such a beautiful
Hmm.
thing. What was a favorite moment for you to work on? And this could actually be in the production or in the post production, or if you have two separate moments, it can be for both.
It would have. I loved every moment on set. Set is also very stressful, you know. So I think my favorite moment on set was when we wrapped and I felt the community around me still want to be, because you know, on some sets it's like once people wrap, everybody goes home. You clean up, you go home, right? And I sort of was expecting that, but I remember at one point they were talking about a rap party, and Mark asked me, you know, Mark is
Yeah.
my production designer. He asked me like, "Oh, do you think you're gonna go?" And I said like kind of to him like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm really tired or whatever." And everybody in the room was like, "What? Like you're not going? Like you're the director?" And I was like, "Wait, y'all want me there?" Like, because you know sometimes you feel like people's like leader or their boss or something, and you don't feel like they want to hang with you.
Mm,
They're working with
yeah.
you, you know. They're so I was not expecting them to want to also participate in that afterwards, and that was very cool. But my favorite part probably was splicing that film together, the editing process. I have a really good
Yeah.
editor. I trust him completely. And he had gone through with the past, and a lot of what he had done, we kept, you know, we shifted other things, and he was open to playing around with the order of the story and communicating with me. And, you know, you never know when you're making it if it's going to be good because you're living with it and you see it every day, you know.
Yeah.
But it was really fun to build that out with CJ and find the story, you know, and
Yeah.
find what from the footage that we had, how we were going to make this film work. You know, that was the best. And I love editing with CJ. So,
I'm speaking in drafts now. Um,
mhm.
is there a is or was there a difference for you in terms of how you exercise collaboration independently? I mean, I guess in some ways they both can be considered independent, but like independently, like with
Mhm.
For the Boys versus um, with like you know the festival
Mm.
studio financial backing, blah blah blah, full crew of them that's not.
That's actually a great question because it for the boys completely informed that process. Having
Mm,
to collaborate so closely with Ellis, taught me how to collaborate. And then also the process of building the show out for like Showtime and stuff taught me how to engage with the powers that be that pay for all this, you know? And so when it came to them, that's not, Concord was very instrumental in shaping it. And it's not that they were ever going to force me to do something I didn't want to do with the film, but they had input and it gave
Yeah.
me good practice at like applying their note while maintaining my vision and in maintaining my integrity. That was really informative. And then collaborating with Sade and DJ and my sound designer Candice and everybody, working with Ellis so closely gave me practice for that, because at the end of the day I am the director, but like I was not the kind of director that was like my way or the highway. Like it taught me how to
Yeah.
like listen to them, you know, and value their input as like, oh, well, let's try it. I actually haven't seen it that way, because oftentimes, even if I don't love exactly what they're doing, what they're going for, the collaborative effort of me meeting them there, especially if I don't have an idea, will make something even better, you know?
Yeah.
And it all started from a thought that they had about it, you know? So there are many things that are part of this film that people compliment all the time. And I'm like, that was a Sade idea. Oh, that was a CJ thing. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
happens all the time. And it's affirming when someone says, "Oh, I love this," and it's something that I came up with. Yeah. But it feels nicer when it's like, "Oh, yeah. You like the candles? That was Sade." Yeah. So
Because
I'm glad
teamwork really
Sade
does make the
suggested
dream
that.
work. You know, I come from the school of like, like I have a vision. I don't have all the money, but I do have a lot of
Hmm.
I have a lot of audacity, right? So it's like I am
Yeah.
oftentimes like I am,
Hmm.
and I know this is the case with other filmmakers within like our circle as well. It's just like we are
Hmm.
often wearing multiple hats. Like, and I jokingly say
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
we are quite often Tyler Perrying all of our projects. So we
Hmm.
are writing, directing, producing, editing, costume designing. Like
Especially
we're
early on,
intimate.
you have
Yes.
to.
Was there a mistake that you made um, that ended up benefiting the film or ended up benefiting the project for you in the outcome? Or like, was there like a fuck up or like a oopsie
Yeah,
daisy or like anything like that that ended up having like a
absolutely.
positive payoff?
Yeah, anytime you shoot, especially with a new team, day one is always everybody figuring each other's vibe out. Kind of like what you were saying, you're working with new people, friends who, some of them who've been friends before in a new capacity. And some of the people on my set had been my friends. A lot of them had been, this is the first time I'm meeting you and we're jumping onto a set, you know, which
Mm,
is very often what it is on a film set. You know, you meet people that day, you work with them for a week, 3 weeks, 3 days, and then that's it, you know. So you're always figuring each other out that first day. And the first day, Sade and I were sort of like figuring out how we maintain our timing, our time management, especially with her getting used to getting acquainted with this camera. She'd never worked with it before. Um, Lighting the house, dealing with daylight, you know, new faces, new actors, interpreters on set, sign language on set. We definitely got to a place where by the end of the day one, we're rushing, you know?
yeah.
Um, and we only had 3 days in the house. Like, it's not even like I could add a fourth day because, quite frankly, I couldn't afford it, you know, and the house is booked the next day. So what ended up happening was that I think I had to cut like 3 or 4 scenes from the
Mm,
finished script, which is wild because looking back, I didn't even need those scenes, and I ended up cutting more. There were scenes that I shot that I was like, we wasted 2 hours shooting this. I didn't need to shoot this. I don't even
mm,
need this scene, you know? Like I added it because this person requested it, or you know, Concord wanted this scene in there, and then the scene ended up not even needing to be present. I never heard about it again because people think that this is needed, and then you watch the film and you're realizing, oh, I didn't even need that moment, you know. So the scene that needed to be in the movie was the last one. Yeah,
gee.
yeah.
No, and what was so interesting about what you just said was, and like I know this is the experience with a lot of projects, but like I feel this so much more. I felt this is so much more the case in documentary filmmaking, which is like there's so much footage that
Hmm.
ends up on like the cutting room floor. Because I mean,
Yes, yeah.
because I actually had a question and you'd already like this was like the best segue. What was what was something that ended up on a cutting room floor?
Yeah, there was a scene that Concord sort of fought for where Drea's father approaches her at the party in the middle of the party. So
Oh,
it would have
okay.
come like in the middle of the film. And I remember arguing against it in the writing process. And it's just saying like it's gonna add pages, add time, hours to the shoot dash. And they were like, no, I think we need this moment in the middle where he tries to talk to her and she avoids him, just so we can get that she's avoiding him. And then I was speaking to Ellis, who I share everything writing wise with, and I heard the same thing from him. He was like, "I feel like you need a moment in the middle with Drea and her dad," and I was like, "Okay." So because that was something that they fought for, um, I fought to shoot it, and I remember other people on set were saying, "You don't need this moment. Like we can move on. Like it's just an unnecessary moment." We shot it, looked great. In the editing process, uh, we're watching the whole like sequence, and it just was coming across mad corny to me. Like I was just like, I don't like this scene, and I feel like it's just like holding the movie up, you know.
Yeah.
And the movie is already a short. You don't want your short to be crazy long, and you don't want it to feel long, you know? And I liked that there was a pace that sort of happened once the party got going in the film, that nothing really stopped that until she hears no from her aunt. Like, Aunt
Mm.
Carol says, no, I can't give you any money, right? I liked that. And that scene did not add to that. And it just came across kind of corny. And you know what? I honestly could tell Angel probably thought it was corny and was just shooting it because she was like, I think you want to get this. But every time she sort of did it, she changed the dialogue up to make it feel more natural to her. And so none of
Mm.
the takes really had continuity. And we were forcing it, so we ended up cutting it. But there was also many things with family members that just didn't stay. I had my cousin stop by because I had this moment where these kids run by Angel, and so she looks down at them and then misses what someone signed to her, and that ended up
Oh.
not making it in.
And that felt like
There
that
was
would be
another
cute
moment.
to see, but like I get it.
It was great, and it was great for my cousins to be there too. They were like, Bilal is. There's two of them. They're brothers, but it's my cousin's sons, and they're like 6 and 8, I want to say. And everybody was so sweet to them, and they're like the cutest kids ever. But they were definitely overwhelmed with all the lights and the cameras. I just don't think they'd ever seen me in that light because I'm like their big cousin to them.
Yeah.
And so usually they're like very vocal and like happy to be around. And they were a little nervous. You could tell they were like, there's a lot of people here and there's a lot of lights and cameras. Like it was just a lot happening to them. Um, so I wanted to keep that so they could see themselves on it, but we had to cut that scene. A lot ended up like being left out of the film to get the film that we have today, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah.
I mean, and
Hmm.
it is also so like weird that like it ends up working out that way, right? It's like you go in, like I
Yeah.
see this project so
Hmm.
clear as day, and then like the final export, it's just like, wow, there are things that like I realized I didn't need to write, I didn't need to shoot, we didn't need to like we could have saved energy
Exactly.
on.
And
Um,
you don't even miss it. You don't even miss those
yeah,
moments. You spend so much time shooting it, and then when you're watching the film, you're like, no, this is it. This is exactly the film that was supposed to be made. So
no,
yeah.
yeah,
Hey, popping in real quick. This isn't an ad. This is a request for community support. If you're enjoying Film Festival Friends and appreciate queer storytelling, then join my Patreon today. These shows are free to watch, but they are not free to make. Your contribution helps me produce shows like this. To sign up, visit the link in my description. Thank you in advance. Now let's get back into the conversation. And you brought this up earlier, so I guess I'll preface this with share what you can share. Given that this
Oh,
is
about
a
Showtime
yes,
and everything.
I do know between us squirrel friends that like there
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
a transition. There was an
Hmm.
insecure pipeline that had happened of like for the boys.
Yes, I can kind of share everything now, but long story short, we were bought by Showtime and essentially was paying us to write a pilot to make the show like a real, like studio supported Showtime original TV show. Yeah. So we were in this position where we were writing a pilot based on the characters that we created for the digital series, you know? Like it was going to be For the Boys based on the web series For the Boys, which is so weird, but a legality thing. Um, but yeah, we were working on that pilot, and that pilot saw so many iterations. There were so many things that I thought were hilarious, and dialogue exchanges from old scripts that I missed. Like I just like loved like seeing their characters come to life that way, you know, and seeing parts of our friendship exist in the show, but we just had to cut to keep it under 35 pages to keep the story moving the right way, you know? So that was a big lesson in learning how to cut my darlings, and I'm less precious about them now. And I find that the more that I create, that lesson was kind of like film school for me, making For the Boys and then taking it to Showtime and getting the opportunity to shadow directors on various sets and things like that because of that show made me prepared for doing what I'm doing now.
I'm seeing it laid out in front of me in real time, and I don't know how well
In
that
real
landed on
time. Yeah.
you, but I just love that there's something very beautiful for me about like knowing that that like one of us can one of us being like indie Black queer storytellers.
Yeah.
That like
One of
that there
our
is hope, like
kindred spirits.
you
Yeah.
went from
Hmm.
creating a show that, as you were saying, was just like we are doing this because we're bored and we want to make the thing,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then for whatever had happened between that point and Showtime, the fact that it had gotten picked up and that there was
Yeah.
a
A possibility.
national,
Hmm.
there was a pipeline for that, and to now be on
Hmm.
a what I believe is a budding, successful festival tour.
Hmm.
I just love what it feels like your artistic career is doing for you, and I'm excited to
Well, I received that.
see where it goes. And I'm curious, like, did any of like was that were you aware of that, or is this also just landing on you somewhat in real time as well?
It's landing on me in this moment in real time because you never see yourself from other people's perspective. So for me, I'm always like, I'm glad it reads that way because to me, I can fully express that I don't attach myself to outcomes, but it came from learning the huge disappointment that comes from attaching yourself to outcomes. Like if you have a set goal and that is the only thing that can happen for this outcome, and it doesn't happen that way, that's devastating. That can be heartbreaking, you know. It feels like a breakup a bit, you know. We have to let something go, or it can even feel like a divorce, which is more legal and like litigious. Like there's contracts and shit, you know, and it gets hard, you know. So I'm only in this place now where it can probably read as something that is an artistic journey that's worth exploring or worth paying attention to because I went through the hard part a little bit, you know? And that's not to say that there's not more hard times coming. It's just to say that yeah, it was tough when it was. So I receive that completely. I'm glad that it reads that way. I'm glad that from your perspective it can come across like that. And I pray for a budding festival journey as well, but I'm only open to that idea because I'm not attaching myself to the outcome of what the film can be. It's just like I made something I care about and now I'm trying to make something else, you know?
I'm trying to be like you when I grow up. Um,
I received that. I received that. I'm trying to be
um,
like you too.
Look, I love that. Okay, so I have two more
Yeah.
things to close us out. So I want you to complete this sentence for me. This is actually pretty simple, but it's a fill in the
Okay.
blank. Black queer film is, and then what is that for you? Black queer film is.
And explorative.
Okay. Now I want you to
Hmm.
close your eyes. This is an exercise of imagination. So this is a sensory question that I'm about to ask you. So feel free to
Ooh,
like think
okay.
on it before you respond. But with you saying Black queer film is explorative,
Hmm.
what does that word look like for you? What does that word smell like for you? What does it taste like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like?
I like
What
this. Yeah.
Thank you. What sensory wise, what is coming up for you? Like what scene do you see? Like walk me through this
Yeah.
world that is building in your mind.
Black queer film is explorative. And what that feels like to me is visually taking paint and throwing it at a canvas, making a kaleidoscope of art, you know? Um, you ever seen those really brilliant artists in those large studios take a paintbrush and dip it in like a bunch of different colors and just splatter it across? Yeah. So it feels, inventive and innovative are the right words, but it feels like there's no limits to it. You can really do whatever, because no one has locked us in a box yet. They haven't given us any opportunity, so we have all the opportunity. There's so much to do with it. And then sound wise, like in the sensory landscape, it's like a symphony. Like it feels like what's the term for when you like taste something and you see colors and stuff like that? That's what
Synesthesia.
Black queer film feels. Yeah, exactly. And so like it feels like when you eat a really good meal or something, or like some really good dessert, and you see the colors like come alive in your head, and
Ooh.
then there's like a Fantasia Disney-esque like symphony behind it. Like it feels like anything can really happen.
Because I'm seeing this beautiful black orchestra in my mind now. I'm also seeing
Yeah.
on the other side of the stage, or like the orchestra is in the the pit or whatever that's called, and on the stage there's this like black queer film, and there's like this massive wall, like, or maybe it's actually just fucking the whole space, and then like I'm just grabbing paint and just like chucking it, not
Yes.
even for the sake of
Yeah.
destruction,
Oh,
but
I
literally
love
for the
that.
sake of like exploration. Because as you were saying it, that is what my mind
But that
started to
also sounds
see.
like it could be, that's cool because that sounds like it could be a short film. Like you could
It
literally
does.
put like J. Harrison G or something like that.
Yeah.
Instead of conducting a symphony, his paintbrush becomes the conductor's wand.
Ooh. See,
And
you
he's
onto
just
something.
doing this. You know what I mean? And then the paint is just like
Yeah.
splattering in time with the music.
It's time for a 60-second pitch, a creative sprint designed to exercise your imagination. Here's how it works. We've got 4 spin wheels with lead and supporting actors, movie genres, and plot devices. I'm going to spin the wheels, and whatever fate hands us, that's your movie. You'll get 30 seconds to ideate, then 60 seconds to pitch your film idea out loud. Let's go. So we're going to spin, and so your lead actor is Teyana Taylor. Your supporting actor is Tom
Okay.
Holland, and you are making a suspense/thriller about a magical wristwatch.
I'm kind of nervous, but all right. Okay, so Teyana Taylor owns a hair shop or something like that. Is doing hair late one night for some girl. The girl leaves late. She's locking up and randomly hears this crash behind the shop. Goes outside to see what's going on, and there is Tom Holland's like dying body, and he falls, and a wristwatch falls off his thing. So she takes the watch basically and is wanting to like return it, I guess, or like figure out where the watch came from, what it does, but it sends her back into all these different time zones. And because Tom died in the time zone that she's in, she has to use the watch to basically save his life before he dies, outside of her store, basically. And so she's using the watch to find Tom in different time zones or different time periods. So she goes back to the 20s and she goes to the future and she goes to the old Egyptian Queen era and Victorian London era, and is finding Tom Holland in all of these spaces, basically trying to save Tom Holland's life from the watch and from some sort of larger
Hi.
crazy ass government. Time up. Okay, okay, that's what came to mind.
No, but
Suspense
that was so
thriller. All right,
inventive.
try
I'm
it, try
screaming.
it. Okay, I got Act One. I got Act One, but we got to figure out what Act Two and Act Three are. But that's
No,
the
but
premise,
it's Teyana
and it's
Taylor
also a
having such
comedy.
a wonderful
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, it is, and it's her running. It's her running. That's the trailer. I just need to have her sprinting. That's it, and I sold it.
You
It's
did.
there. It's there.
Okay, so
But
wait.
no, that's a fun game. I want to do that again. That's
Now that
fun.
we are out of the pitch, what would you call it? Granted, you said it's a comedy, but it is actually
Um,
a horror thriller. But like,
well,
what do we
a
call it?
horror thriller with comedic elements. With comedic
It's very
elements.
Get Out.
Very much that. Yeah. I don't have a title. Out of time, I guess.
Okay.
Borrowed time, maybe. You know, something with time.
Reputable.
Something with time. Yeah, flick of the wrist is crazy. Flick of the wrist is actually what I'm going to call it. Flick of the wrist.
Do you have anything that you want to leave me with, or leave the viewers with, leave anybody with, as a, you know, a multiple-time award-winning filmmaker who is doing all the great things?
Yeah. Keep creating. That's what I want to leave the audience with. Keep making things. Keep making things. We are explorative. Paint the canvas, you know?